The reason you're working 8 hours to finish a task that should take 3 isn't a problem with your skills. It's a problem with physics. There's a hidden law of productivity that governs your time, and it's silently stealing half your life. We'll show you how to break this law and instantly collapse your workload. Okay, let's really unpack that for a second, because that statement is absolutely not an exaggeration. It points to this fundamental principle that dictates why so many of us feel constantly busy but never really productive. It's a force that is as real as gravity, and it's working against your efficiency every single day. So understanding it, that's the first step to finally taking back control. So let's put a name to this hidden law. What we're really talking about here is a paradox. It's this strange, weird loop in how we see and use our time. And it's the very reason that a super simple task can feel absolutely monumental, and why your to-do list just seems to grow and grow no matter how hard you work.
And here is Parkinson's law. Now, it's a simple, almost deceptive statement, but the implications are just massive. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Just think about that. If you give yourself a whole week to write a 2-page report, guess what? That report is going to take you the entire week. Your brain will fill that space with procrastination, with unnecessary research, with endless tiny revisions. But if you give yourself just 90 minutes for that exact same report, you'll get it done. The task itself didn't change at all, but the container for the task did. See, more time doesn't equal better work. A lot of the time, it just creates more complexity and a ton of wasted energy.
You know, to really beat this thing, we've got to diagnose the problem on a cognitive level. This isn't just about bad time management, it's a feature of how our brains are wired. So let's give this diagnosis a name. We'll call it time inflation. It's this tendency for a task's perceived difficulty and its complexity to just inflate, to get bigger, based on the amount of time we give it.
What's so wild about this is how clearly it shows the two different realities we can create for ourselves. I mean, look at the left column, under a generous deadline. This is where most of us live, right? We procrastinate because, hey, there's no immediate pressure. The task inflates in complexity. We start thinking about all these edge cases that don't even matter. We get lost in mental tinkering, endlessly tweaking little details, rewriting sentences, second-guessing fonts, stuff that adds zero real value. The result? Low velocity. We're moving, sure, but we're crawling. Now look at the right side, a tight deadline. Well, it manufactures urgency. It forces you into high focus. It demands ruthless prioritization. You literally have no choice but to work on what truly matters. The result is high velocity. You get more done faster. The key thing here is that you get to choose which column you operate in with every single task you schedule.
So this really begs the question, doesn't it? If the path to high velocity is so clear, why is our default setting the complete opposite? Why do our brains naturally just gravitate towards delay and complication whenever we give them the chance? Well, the answer is in our psychology, and luckily, that's something we can actually engineer.
And this brings us right to the solution. We can't just wish our way into that right-hand column. It doesn't work like that. We need a system, a defensive framework designed specifically to fight back against time inflation. Let's call it the constraint framework. Think of it as the antidote to our brain's most destructive habits.
This framework is built on 3 pillars, okay? First, time block with rigidity. This isn't just, tossing an item on your calendar. It's about being aggressive. If you think a task is going to take 2 hours, you schedule it for 75 minutes. This act of forced scarcity, that's what creates the urgency we need. Second, you have to define the deliverable. Before you even think about starting the timer, you write down in 1 or 2 sentences exactly what done looks like. This is your minimum viable product, your MVP. It stops perfectionism in its tracks and gives you a clear finish line. And third, no debate execution. Once that timer starts, you are a machine. You single task with 0 interruptions. No checking email, no getting coffee. You commit 100% because that clock is ticking.
So here's the most crucial part of all this. The framework isn't about willpower. Willpower is fragile, it's unreliable. This is about outsourcing your discipline to the system itself. The aggressive time block, the defined MVP, that ticking timer, these things all combine to create an external authority. You're not debating with yourself anymore about whether to start or what to do next. The system tells you what to do. The urgency feels real, immediate, and high stakes because you've engineered it that way.
Okay, so now that we've got the what, let's talk about the why. Why is this simple little framework so incredibly effective? Well, it works because it directly taps into and exploits 2 really powerful psychological mechanisms that govern procrastination and focus. We're essentially hacking our own brains to force ourselves to be productive. So the first hack is all about overriding something called temporal discounting. Now that's a fancy term for a very simple human truth. Our brains value rewards right now way more than rewards in the future. I mean, this chart shows it perfectly. Look at the bar on the left for a distant deadline. The reward for finishing is so far away, so our motivation is super low. We choose the immediate reward of scrolling through social media instead. But when you create an immediate, non-negotiable deadline, like you see in that much higher bar on the right, the reward of getting it done feels real, tangible, and close, and boom, motivation skyrockets. You've made doing the work right now more valuable than any distraction.
The second psychological hack is honestly even more powerful. A severe time constraint triggers what's known as the tunnel effect. Just think about the last time you were really up against a serious deadline. The world outside just kind of fades away, right? Your focus narrows, you become incredibly efficient. That's the tunnel effect. The stress of that constraint shifts your brain into this state of alert, high-focus concentration, and it's a state we can actually trigger on demand.
And what that state feels like is like a funnel for your focus. When you're in the tunnel, your brain just automatically starts filtering out all the distractions. It stops wasting energy on low-value stuff and focuses only on the high-leverage steps that'll get you across the finish line. This actually conserves precious energy in your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain in charge of decision-making. And the result? It seems like a miracle. You produce better, more focused work in way less time.
All right, we've gone through the theory, we've covered the psychology. Now let's make this really, really real. Here is the exact non-negotiable guide you can use on your very next task to instantly collapse your workload.
Here it is, your tactical guide. Step 1 is the extreme time challenge. Pick a task, any task. Estimate how long you think it'll take, and then I want you to cut that time. And not by a little, but by a lot. Step 2, define the finish line. Before you hit start, write down your MVP. What is the absolute bare minimum required for this task to be a success? Get it on paper. And finally, step 3, execute with monastic focus. Set a timer, turn off all your notifications, and just go. Devote yourself completely to that task until the timer rings.
Now, when I say cut your estimated time, I mean by this much, 30 to 50%. And yeah, it's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's supposed to. If you estimated 2 hours for something, you schedule 60, maybe 75 minutes. This is not a suggestion. This is the core mechanism that makes this whole system work. That aggressive cut is what manufactures the high-stakes urgency you need to trigger that tunnel effect.
Now listen, this is arguably the most important and probably the hardest part of the whole process. When that timer goes off, you are done. You stop working, even if it's not perfect. The goal here is to train your brain to respect the container you've built. You're building the discipline to see the time, not the endless chase for perfection, is your primary constraint. Shipping a good enough version on time is infinitely more productive than chasing a flawless version that never actually gets finished.
So let's just zoom out for a minute. What we've been talking about is more than just a productivity hack. It's a complete shift in philosophy. It's about moving from a mindset of abundance, an abundance of time, to a philosophy of forced scarcity. And this right here, this is the single most valuable lesson you can take away from all this. Your output is not proportional to the hours you work or how hard you hustle. It is directly proportional to the quality of the constraints you impose on your time. A generous deadline is a psychological trap. It practically invites complexity. A tight, well-defined constraint? That's a tool for clarity, for focus, and for incredible velocity.
We've covered the law, the diagnosis, the framework, the psychology, and the action plan. So when it all comes down to it, what's the ultimate takeaway? How do we distill all of this down into a brand new operating system for how we work?
Here's your new operating system. First, just remember that applying this constraint framework is how you solve that problem of time inflation. It's your tool to force efficiency. Second, understand why it matters so much. Your artificial constraints override your brain's default desire to procrastinate by hacking temporal discounting, making the task feel urgent right now. And finally, that MVP framework combined with the tight deadline is what triggers the psychological tunnel effect, creating that state of effortless, deep focus.
And that is the final thought I really want to leave you with. True productivity isn't about grinding harder or adding more hours to your day. It's about being smarter. It's about mastering systems just like this one that make focus and clarity and execution effortless. So your challenge now is to take this framework and apply it. Not tomorrow, not next week. Apply it to the very next task you have to do today. Define your MVP, cut the time by 40%, and just see what happens.